Hello, welcome back to my channel. As you have probably seen if you've watched a few of my videos, I really love to read and I really love books, but also I really like to watch movies and TV shows. They are two passions that I've always had, and I really love when those two passions collide. So today I'm going to take you through 15 film adaptation or TV show adaptations that are in the works for popular books that I have either read, that I know are popular, or that are on my TBR that I want to share with you. And some of these will have more details than others, and I'm kind of just picking out the details or the information for those different titles that most interest me. If you're interested in any of these, you can probably go and Google and find some more info out yourself. But yeah, let's start here and let's get into it. So I just want to preface this. When I first got out of college, or even when I was in college, I interned, but my first real job out of college was working in film production. So I actually worked in film production. I worked in the creative department, which is a lot of development, optioning films. Optioning is basically buying the rights to some kind of entity. So you're either buying somebody's life rights, or you're buying the rights to adapt and portray a book or an essay or anything into a movie or a TV show. I also worked in the business and legal side of films, where you're contracting with directors, writers, actors, all of that. And then I also worked in production, physical production, which is the scheduling, making call sheets, doing the actual day-to-day of preparing to film something and filming it, and then post-production. So I've seen the whole gamut. I have a pretty good background. I did that for about 5 years until I kind of went and segued into a different part of my career. But I think that that is a really fun little anecdote to share, because it gives me a little bit more insight into this. Knowing how film goes, just because a lot of these titles may be optioned or bought, or the rights have been bought to them, does not mean that they are going to come to fruition. A lot of times companies will buy up rights so that another studio cannot buy up the rights and make the book or the adaptation. So it's very interesting. Also, most books, if they're popular, that are on like a New York Times bestseller, have probably already been bought or already been optioned. One of my jobs as an intern was to weekly print out the New York Times bestseller, and then to go through that list and see if those titles have already been bought or optioned by other studios. Most of the time they had been. If they're on that list, they're popular enough where those rights have been bought. Now, whether that studio is going to move forward with it and actually create something, time will tell, but it takes a lot for a movie or a TV show to actually happen. So like I said, take all of this news with a grain of salt. Just because I'm mentioning that these rights or titles have been bought does not mean that it's ever going to happen. So the ones that I have more news about and casting news, those are more realistically going to happen because more headway has been made with them. So anyways, let's get started. The first adaptation I want to talk about is The Wager. Now, I have seen this title everywhere. It is actually the same author, David Grann, of Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, I have read Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm sure a lot of you have seen or at least heard about the film adaptation of this book with Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio. Well, for The Wager, we are going to see those two reunite again, and they are working on this film. I do not know how far along they are. They did say this is going to be an Apple original film, which I think Killers of the Flower Moon was as well. So we can probably expect the same kind of tone and vibes, really sophisticated, elevated representation of the book. So that's really exciting, and this is a book that I definitely want to read. I do love nonfiction, and I have seen it everywhere, and I know a lot of people love it. The next one is Project Hail Mary. You probably have heard about this book. I'm sure you've heard about this book actually, by Andy Weir. He also wrote The Martian, and they made this one a film already with Matt Damon. I read Project Hail Mary. I did not read The Martian. This is actually my husband's copy, but since I saw the movie, I might not read this book, just because I didn't love Project Hail Mary, although I, in the unpopular opinion, a lot of people loved it. So please go read that book if you're still interested in it. So this movie is going to be released next March, so pretty soon. This one's actually in production, I think, so that pretty much means it's going to be released, it's going to happen, and it's going to star Ryan Gosling as the main character, which is really cool. I could definitely see him in that title, although Ryan Gosling kind of fits any character you put him into. He's just so great. And also another thing to note, Drew Goddard, that did the screenplay adaptation for The Martian, is also doing it for Project Hail Mary. So they're gonna have the same kind of vibe, tone that Drew Goddard does. And that is good because I think he did a really good job adapting for this movie, and I think he'll do another great job for Project Hail Mary. Next up, we have Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I have 2 Kazuo books. I do not have Klara and the Sun, which is ironic because Klara and the Sun I've actually read, and then the 2 Kazuo books that I do have, I haven't read. Yeah, Klara and the Sun, I think I was kind of lukewarm to this title. I did like the idea of it, and I think if it became a movie, it would expand and kind of bring to life some of the elements that I thought were kind of boring or weren't dove deep enough in the book. And sometimes I think with film you can kind of explore that in more depth, but not as much time, if that makes sense. So I'm very excited about this one. This one's going to be directed by Taika Waititi. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I have seen him all over. He's doing so many cool things. He's doing a big range of things too. Just to kind of give you an idea, he's done tons of movies. He's done Jojo Rabbit, Thor, so he does a wide range of movies. And they've already cast this movie, which is a very good sign, and they have Amy Adams and Jenna Ortega playing the 2 main characters. And then this one has a release date of late 2024. So if it has a release date, it's happening. I think they're probably filming it now. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. I really think that the premise of that book will play on screen maybe better than the book played out for me personally, and I would be interested to see that film. We also have another book adaptation on this list. It's also going to be directed by Taika Waititi. Is James by Percival Everett. Now this book has kind of been all over. It's been on my TBR. I really want to get to it. Actually don't have a copy, so I need to go buy a copy, but I'm actually really interested in this author in general. I know he has Erasure, which is probably my #1 book that I want to get to, and then he has Trees. He has a bunch of books that I'm super interested in. So James is supposed to be a alternate perspective of Huckleberry Finn, and it is following James versus Huckleberry Finn. It's going to have the same director, and it is going to be produced by Steven Spielberg. Well, executive produced. So sometimes when something is executive produced, it's more of a broad term, and so he's going to mostly probably be financing it and giving general guidance, but he might not be super involved. Executive producing and producing in general is such a wide range. Some producers are super involved, and some producers are very hands-off and they're just financing or giving general ideas or just throwing their name on the film. So you never really know, but since he's executive producing, I have a feeling it is probably because he is just kind of overseeing it, but you know, there's probably a main set of producers that is making this film happen. And it's also going to be released by Universal Pictures. I think Steven Spielberg has a deal with Universal Pictures. So that is very exciting. And I think there'll be plenty of time for me to read that book and some of his others before this movie comes out, since I didn't find a release date. A lot of these movies, I am just kind of giving you my quick Google research that I've done or stuff that I've seen. So there might be other details on these that I'm not sharing on the video, or just haven't come across or have come out since this video. Oh, and then this next one also kind of ties into Klara and the Sun because it's also going to star Amy Adams, and that is Nightbitch. So this one I have not read, but I have seen it everywhere, and I know it is a favorite for a lot of the girlies on Book Talk and even on BookTube. And this one has a release date of the end of this year. So this one is probably, I think it's already wrapped and it's probably in its post-production phase. So we will be seeing that one very soon. I assume there's probably a trailer out for it, or at least some film collateral, whether it's posters or whatever it is. So that is very exciting. I wanted to share that one just for all the girlies that really love that book. Then another very popular series that I have not read is the Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I know a lot of people really love that series. I do want to kind of try it, although sometimes cozy mystery, I think that one's considered cozy mystery. Sometimes cozy mystery or cozy anything just doesn't hit for me, so it makes me a little hesitant about it. But I do know a lot of people love that series, so I did want to include it and share, and there is quite a few details about it. They already have casting. It's filming actually right now, so we do know that we will see it hopefully. And it is produced by Steven Spielberg, another Steven Spielberg. It's his production company in partnership with Netflix, so I'm assuming this is going to be a Netflix original. And it is starring Helen Mirren, Ben Kingsley, Pierce Brosnan, Naomi Ackie, David Tennant, so many stars. And I think that's a pretty big ensemble character book, so I'm assuming that's why we have this big ensemble cast. It is directed by Chris Columbus. He did classics like Mrs. Doubtfire, Home Alone. Oh, and he also did the first 2 Harry Potter movies, so he's the king of cozy. So I think he is going to have that perfect touch for a cozy, fun, memorable film, or at least I hope so. There is no release date yet, but like I said, it is filming, and if they're filming, unless something happens and it gets canned, it'll probably see the light of day, and it will probably be coming out next year if it's filming now, or maybe early 2026. Okay, and then the next one I have is actually a book that I hadn't heard of, but the casting news really kind of excited me about this one, and so it's kind of brought my attention to that book, so I think I'm gonna add it to my TBR, and it is Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. So I think from what I have seen, the book is called Mickey 7. Okay, sorry, my camera just died or didn't film what I was saying, so the lighting has changed, but continuing on. So the book that I was talking about was Mickey 7, and the interesting thing that I found out about this title is I think the film is going to be called Mickey 17, if I'm correct. So there must be something with that number that ties into the plot, or something that makes better sense for it to be 17 in the film. So that is interesting. So the thing that was most exciting to me about this title was the behind the scenes director, and then in front of the camera, the main actor that they've cast. So it is going to be directed, written, and co-produced by Bong Joon-ho, and he is a very, very famous Korean filmmaker. He has done Parasite, Snowpiercer, Okja, Mother. He is just doing things in the filmmaking universe that a lot of people aren't doing, or are not being able to do because the studios aren't backing them, aren't financing these kinds of films. So it is very exciting that he is kind of at the helm, and he is going to be writing it and producing it himself. The person that has been cast is Robert Pattinson, which is really fun. He kind of, I think he's mentioned it in interviews since Twilight, that since he's done the big commercial success, the big franchises, really looking to do films that fulfill his passion for acting, and picking those weird, odd films that maybe aren't the big paycheck, but are the ones that kind of allow him to stretch his wings in acting and work with interesting filmmakers. So I'm really excited that he has signed on for this film. I think that him and the director are gonna really make something really interesting, and something that people are gonna talk about. So I definitely need to read this book, because I am definitely going to see this movie. Then the next one I'm gonna talk about is kind of a combination one, because it is Emily Henry. So she is the it girl in romance right now. All of her books have basically been optioned and bought by various production companies, and so she has different books at different production companies. So the one that I'm going to talk about the most is Happy Place, because Happy Place was my personal favorite. This was a 5-star read for me. Her other books that I've read, they have been kind of like 3-star mid reads for me. Entertaining, but didn't do a lot. For some reason I really connected with Happy Place. And the thing that kind of worries me a bit is Jennifer Lopez's company has bought the rights to this one, so her production company will be working on it, and that worries me a little bit, because we know J-Lo and her filmmaking decisions the last couple years. So I'm really hoping she can do this one justice, and that she has a good team around her that will bring life into this. So we will see, but All of her other books are also optioned. You can also read all the different details about those ones, and she is the it girl right now. And you know what? It's good. It's exciting because I do feel like there's a big gap in romantic comedies or romantic drama films right now in the movie universe, so I welcome them, and I think that her books are perfect for that type of film. And then I wanted to talk about Ninth House, which is by Leigh Bardugo. I have not read Ninth House. I have read Six of Crows, and I'm going to be reading the second one, Crooked Kingdom, very soon. And then I've also read The Familiar. So Ninth House, I definitely need to get to, and I definitely need to read it. I know it's polarizing. I know some people really love it, and some people really don't like it. This one is going to be adapted to a TV show on Amazon Prime. And she has said in the interviews that I've read that she is definitely more involved in this one than she was in the Shadow and Bone adaptation that was on Netflix. So that could be a really good thing. That could make the series more in tune with the book and the same style. But I do know the Shadow and Bone series was still very popular, and unfortunately I think it was canceled. And I also read that she is writing alongside Jeff Pinkner, who is a pretty famous TV writer. He worked on shows like Fringe and Alias. I think he was one of J.J. Abrams' writers. So that is very exciting. I think that they will probably be able to bring something a little bit more gritty to the screen, since Pinkner kind of writes in those more gritty, darker shows. And then lastly, we have some Stephen King news. I mean, I'm pretty sure every one of his books have been bought, and many of his books have been done and redone and are going to be continued to redone. But the book that I wanted to talk about most was Billy Summers, since this one is on my TBR and one that I'm really, really excited to get to. Also, what's really exciting about this one, and the reason that I wanted to talk about it, is because it is going to be adapted by J.J. Abrams' production company. So I can definitely imagine J.J. Abrams' filmmaking style going along with and complementing Stephen King's writing. That's really all the news I have about it. I think it's supposed to be a mini-series, which, from what I've read from the premise of this, that will be a very good vehicle to tell this story. Not think that there was any release date or any other info, but this was definitely the King property that I wanted to talk about most. The next book I want to talk about is Piranesi. Now this book has been on my TBR for some time. I know a lot of people really love this. I will read this by the end of the year. It is on my end of the year must read TBR, so it will be read. From what I have heard, this is going to be adapted as an animation, which kind of makes sense because with books that are either fantasy or Greek mythology, and there's a lot of, you know, location or special effects that need to be done to make the film, a lot of times animation is going to be much cheaper. And to do that, you know, in a grand scale in live action, like a Game of Thrones, is going to be very, very expensive and very, very hard to get across the board to get actually made. So it kind of makes sense that this is getting made into an animation, but kind of bums me out because I'm not really an adult animation fan. I mean, I can definitely watch like the Disney and Pixar movies, but I don't know how I feel about adult animation movies. So it is getting produced by a company called Laika, I think that's how you pronounce their name, and they have produced quite a lot of really high-end animation like Coraline and a bunch of others. So they are probably the best, or one of the best animation studios to take over this title. But like I said, I don't know how much interest I personally will have, so I guess we'll kind of have to see what happens and if it kind of continues to develop and if we get to see some media reels or something about it to entice me. But that's Piranesi, and I know a lot of people love this, so I definitely wanted to share. Another book that is on my TBR that they are that has been optioned is Ink Blood Sister Scribe. This is another book I really, really want to get to by the end of this year. There was a lot of buzz about it the end of last year, and I saw it on a lot of people's favorites list. So it is being adapted and written by Bronwyn Garrity, who I have noted who did Outlander and Umbrella Academy, amongst other things. And there is no cast or release date, so it is very early stages. So we will see if this will actually pick up and will become something, or if it'll just kind of die. So I am excited to see where that one goes. Next we have Babel by R.F. Kuang. I enjoyed The Poppy Wars by R.F. Kuang, and I'm definitely going to continue that series and read the second and third book. I have not read Yellowface, and Babel I think I probably read 30% and fell off of it. I think that was a common problem with people that did DNF it. Some people really love Babel, and I can understand why for how much I've read, but for me, I was just not the reader for it. It wasn't the right style. It was a lot of educating and jargon, and it was a little too heavy in that kind of lost me, but I know a lot of people really love that. So I definitely liked the vibes and the dark academia of it, and I really think it'd be cool if it came to life on screen. It is optioned by Temple Hill, which has done films like Maze Runner, Hate You Give, Paper Towns, Fault in Our Stars, Twilight. So they are pros at book adaptations. As you can see, they've done quite a lot. So that makes me believe that Babel is in very good hands. And I can't imagine with R.F. Kuang's popularity that she would option it to a production company that wasn't well endowed to be able to bring this kind of title to life. So very, very cool news. There is no release date or casting that I've seen on that one, so it is very early stages. The next one I have another off my TBR, Red Rising. So I know that the news has kind of been on and off with this one, and that the author Pierce Brown is very, very heavily involved in the decisions about the adaptation and the writing. The latest news that I have came across is that he is working with a prominent streaming service. He hasn't said which streaming service. Right now going to be a TV series, and he's pushing for live action. He doesn't want it to be animation. Like we talked about before, fantasy is really expensive to do live action because you have to do a lot of special effects, and that's very expensive. You know, obviously really wants it to be live action. I think that these kinds of titles, especially as an adult fantasy, is going to work best in live action. So I'm glad that he's pushing for that and not settling for animation. And the only other news is that I have is that he's very heavily involved, and that is always a good sign in that the adaptation will be very true, but also sometimes knowing from the film studio side, that can be a bad thing because writers are so precious about their properties that, which it makes sense, it's their babies, they've created these characters in this story, but at the same time, sometimes they can be really stubborn and really stringent on how things play out on film, and sometimes the studio, obviously the producers in the studios that do this all the time, a lot of times know what is going to work in a film better than a writer. So there is that push and pull of where the writer knows best and where the production company knows best. So I can see him being heavily involved, a great thing, but also I could see it being something that kind of slows the process down, and there has to be a lot more hand-holding on the film studio side to work with the author and kind of make those compromises. So it'll be very interesting. I know this is a super, super popular series. I think there are like 4 or 5 in this series. So if they do a TV series, I can only assume that it would be a few seasons, if it's not canceled, to tell the whole story. And last but not least, we have Blake Crouch's Recursion. I don't have a copy. I have a bunch of other Blake Crouch back there, but I have read Recursion. I think Recursion is my favorite Blake Crouch book that I have read, although all of his books are really fun. I enjoy all of them. I really enjoyed the Dark Matter Apple TV series adaptation of his book Dark Matter. It was really good, especially at the end, and it kind of made me want to reread the book because giving it life and then being able to go back and read it, remembering different parts, is really exciting. But I do know Blake Crouch was really heavily involved in the Dark Matter series and wrote it, so he did make some changes, and I think that really worked well because he kind of knew where to take the story and what would work. But Recursion news was also really exciting to me because it is rumored to be being developed for Netflix by Shonda Rhimes and Matt Reeves. So Shonda Rhimes obviously has a deal with Netflix. She's producing a lot of really high impact shows. Bridgerton is huge right now and is continuing to be a huge show for Netflix. And so this news is super exciting because Shonda Rhimes doing Recursion is kind of interesting to me because she does a lot of dramas and, you know, romance, and so for her to do sci-fi, I'm like, I want to see that. I want to see that take. The only thing that has given me some hesitation is this news was years ago and there hasn't been a ton of updates. But as far as we know, it is still in development with her. She is a very busy lady, and Matt Reeves is as well. So I can only assume it's maybe been put on the back burner a little bit, but I'm hoping it's still going to happen. So we will see. Those are the 15 adaptations that I am very excited to share with you today. Hopefully, like I said, I can make this a series and kind of share with you more news that I come across so that you can get excited, and especially if they are books that are on your TBR that you now realize are going to be a movie and a TV show, and you're the type of person that wants to read the book before you watch, you can now get ahead of that and start reading that book knowing that it is in the works to either become a movie or TV show. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!